Hello and welcome to ukramedia.com. My name is Sergey Prokhnevsky, and today I'm going to show you 26 useful tricks in After Effects that you may not know about. And it is important to point out that this is part 4, which means that part 1, 2, and 3 are out there. So make sure you watch them first before you watch this one. And so yeah, without any further ado, let's dive right in. Number 1 is CC Composite. And this one is incredible. So let me show you what you can do with it. So, and also keep in mind that I'm only scratching the surface here. But for this example, I have a text and a shape layer and a JPEG, just a background. So yeah, this shape layer is just a, circle. So how do I combine these two on one layer? So let me show you. So I'm going to erase this shape layer and then hide this background. So all I have is just a text. And I'm going to select this tool, this ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw on top of my text layer the shape that I want. So I'm going to hold Alt, and in the center here I'm going to click and drag and then hold down Control and Shift. And you can also use spacebar, hold down spacebar to move it around like this. So something like that is good. So next what I'll do is apply my fill layer. I want this circle to be orange, and as you can see, it's applying it to the text and not my shape. So I'm going to select here and tell it to use this mask, which is good, and I'm going to change the color over to my orange. And it's still a problem. As you can see, this shape is on top of my text, and I want this text to be in front of it. So this is where I'll use CC Composite. So let's bring this CC Composite, double click on it, and automatically, as you can see, it pops this text in front of everything. And so the way CC Composite works, it takes on the role of your original layer. And by original layer, I mean this layer without all the effects. So it acts as if the CC Composite is this layer. So think of it as like a layering system. So now you can do opacity, control that. You can do blending modes. You can put it behind stuff. You can, obviously we want it in front, or you can do this silhouette alpha and cut like holes and stuff inside shapes. It's pretty awesome, really. And you can also do this RGB only, or you can uncheck it and use alpha channel. That's nice, but the thing I like the most about it is that you can keep applying effects on top of it. So let's do like a directional blur as an example here, and I'm going to go crazy with it. And now I can do another CC Composite. In other words, bring this layer on top of all my effects. And as you can see, it pops it up there. Yeah, essentially it's like a layering system for the effect controls. Number 2 is sequence layers. And this one is extremely useful if you need to offset a bunch of layers in your composition. So here's an example. For instance, I have like a simple little scale animation on all of my layers. What if I want to offset them by, like, let's say 4 frames? I hope you're not doing this like 1, 2, 3, 4, select another one, and like this can take you forever, especially if you have a lot of layers. So the quickest way to get that done is just select all your layers that you want to offset, and then just do page down 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're going to offset it by 4 frames, and make sure they're selected, and do Alt close bracket to size them down to 4 frames. So the length of each layer is 4 frames. That's important. And then once you've done that, make sure they're selected again. Right click here and then go to Keyframe Assistant and then go to Sequence Layers. Click on that. And you can do overlap, like a transition stuff, but I'm not going to do that in this example. So I'm going to uncheck that, hit OK. And as you can see that it offsetted it by 4 frames. But here's a problem, it's not long enough. So I'm just going to go to the end of my composition here and select all of my layers here and do Alt close bracket to extend them to the end of this composition. So now if I play it, you can see that it's all offset, and I did it in seconds. So another cool thing about this, you're not really limited to, like, you can extend each layer to different length. So you're not limited to whatever. So that's good. And another thing, it offsets each layer based on the selection. So like if you want this one to be first, and then hold down Control, and this one second, third, and so on, it is going to offset it on the way you select them. So let's say my selection here, and I'm going to right click here and go to Keyframe Assistant, Sequence Layers, hit OK. And as you can see, it offsetted it based on the way I selected these layers. So now I just go to the end of it, do Alt close bracket, and there you have it. Number 3 is layer reveal in Explorer. And this one is definitely a time-saving tip. Yeah, so before in the past, to reveal this layer in Explorer, you would have to do right click and then do the whole reveal layer, source, and project, and only out of here you would do right click and then reveal in Explorer. But now you can skip all those steps and just do straight from the layer. So just right click and do reveal in Explorer, and it'll take you to the source. Number 4 is importing files into Timeline from Explorer. So here's the thing. So before in the past, to bring something into After Effects, you would have to click and drag and put it in here. But now you don't have to do that. You can just click and drag it directly into the timeline of your composition. Number 5 is Tool Creates Mask. So, and for this, I'm going to draw a star on my composition here. Just a simple star. Do Control-Alt-Home to center the pivot point, Control-Home to center the star. And next, what if I want to draw like a mask on top of my shape layer here to mask the top of my star? So like you would on a solid. So can I do that on the shape layer? Let's see. So I'm going to select the shape layer and then just go to like a rectangle tool here and draw a mask. And as you can see, it doesn't work. Instead, it just creates another shape layer. So how do I draw a mask on top of a shape layer? Is it even possible? Let's see. So I'm going to Control Z, undo that. So next, to do this, you either select one of these tools or a pen tool. While you have them selected, go over to this area here. Instead of having this icon selected, select this Tool Creates Mask. And now you can easily draw masks on top of a shape layer. Number 6 is Mask Feather Tool, and for this I'm just going to draw a quick mask around this object here, like so. And I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to bring Mask Feather Tool. You can also find it in here. So I'm going to add a point by clicking on a mask here and dragging up. And as you can see, if I pull it up away from the mask, it gets more feathered. But if I bring it closer, it gets more sharp. So that's good. You can add more points by either clicking on the mask here or on the edge of the feather here, like so. You can see that there's a plus sign. So you can add as many as you'd like. And the cool thing is you can also move them around, bring them closer, further apart. Another thing, if you hold Alt and click and drag on any of the points, you can make them sharp or more smooth or round, I guess. So that's cool. Another thing, if you right click on it, click hold here, it will maintain that height all the way to the next point. So that's also cool. And another thing, if you want to eliminate any of the points, just hold down Control and click on any of the points. What I really like about this, if you select like a point on a mask, you can tell that if you move it around that the feathering stays with it. Number 7 is Mask Opacity. And so for this composition, all of my layers have masks on them. So, and what if I want to change the opacity of each mask? It can get pretty crazy. So if I guess I can hit M twice and see all of the properties of my masks, but it gives me way too many options. So how do I simplify it to only mask opacity? In other words, I want to see mask opacity only. Is there a shortcut for it? And the answer is yes. All you have to do is just hit T twice on your keyboard, like so, and it'll give you exactly what you want. Number 8 is Toggle Masks and Shape Path Visibility. And so for this, I have a layer that has a mask on it. And so what if, let's say, I see this mask around my layer. What if I want to hide it? In other words, like sometimes, you just want to select the layer and, scale it like that by its corner. But if you have like a mask, sometimes you can accidentally select the mask, and that can get annoying. So how do I temporarily disable the mask or disable the visibility of the mask, but still have it here? So to do that, all you have to do is just click on this icon here. And as you can see, the mask goes away, and but it's still in here. So now you can scale the layer and stuff, and you will not select the mask. So if you want to bring it back, just click on it again, and it'll be here as well. And also, if you want to, once you hide the mask, you still have the layer controls here, like these little dots. So how do you even hide those? So to hide those, you just do Control-Shift-H, and it will hide everything else. Number 9 is snapshots. So we all know the classic snapshot. You can take like a picture of your composition by clicking on this icon, and then later, when you move stuff around, you can always compare whatever you have here with your snapshot. You can see your snapshot by clicking on this icon here, and that's nice. But what you probably didn't know is that you can take more than one snapshot. In other words, you're not limited to this one icon. So to take first picture, you just hit Shift F5, and takes the first picture, and then you can move things around a bit, and then do Shift F6 to take the second picture, and then move stuff around. Shift F7 to take the third one, and let's do one more. Shift F8. So essentially, we took 4 pictures, and F5, F6, F7, and F8 are like your storage units. So to take a picture, you do Shift F5, Shift F6, and etc. But to view what you took, you just hit F5 to view the first one, F6 to view the second, and F7 the third, and F8, obviously, here you go, F8. So yeah, to take a picture, you do Shift F5, and to view it, you just hit F5. But what if, let's say, you want to, like, here's my F6. What if you want to clear that? How do you clear that? Obviously, you can just take another one, Shift F6. But to clear that without taking another picture, all you have to do is just hold Control Shift F6, and it will clear your basically F6 snapshot. So now if I do F5, you can see F5. F6, it's blank. There's nothing there. F7 and F8. So yeah, you can definitely take more than one snapshot, and it's very useful. Number 10 is animating text along a path. And so for this, I have a text layer in here in my composition. So I'm just going to select this, and I'm going to draw a mask on my text layer. So it is important that you draw it on your text layer. So you can use whatever tool you want, any of these, or a pen tool. I'm just going to use an ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw a circle on my text layer like this. Something like that would work. And as you can see, it's cutting it out, so it's basically a mask. But I don't want it to use it like a mask, so I'm just going to make sure to set it to none. And so next, I want to put this text on my path here. So how do I do that? So next, I'm going to drop this option here for the text, and then go into the path options. And where it says path, I'm just going to define the mask 1, basically tell it to be mask 1, and automatically, as you can see, it drops it in my path here, and it gives you a few options in here. You can play around and see what it does, but you can also animate this thing. You can move this last margin or first margin, and you can do other things as well. You can still adjust the text, the size, the kerning, all that stuff. Number 11 is new comp from selection. So before, in the past, to make a composition from your a still or footage, you would have to select it and click and drag on top of this icon here, and then it will create a new comp pretty much. But now we have a shortcut. So all you have to do is just select your comp and do Alt \, and it creates a new comp from your selected still or footage, whatever it is you have. But also, you can do more than one. You can just select a bunch of elements and do Alt \, and it'll ask you a question. Do you want a single composition? In other words, do you want all that to be dropped in one composition, or do you want each one of them to be a separate composition? So multiple compositions is fine, and hit OK. And there you have it. Number 12 is trim comp to work area. So I have this composition here, and let's say I want to shorten my composition to about here, and I'll hit N on my keyboard, and it'll shorten it. And now I want to trim my work area. In other words, I want to shave all this stuff off. So normally I would just do right click in here and do trim comp to work area, and it'll trim it for me. But now there's a quicker way, which is a shortcut, and I love shortcuts. So Control Shift X is a new shortcut, and it'll get the job done. Number 13 is cycle project color depth. In the past, if I wanted to change the project color depth, I would have to left click here, and then go to this depth settings and just pick whatever it is I need, and then hit OK. But the problem is that's way too many steps. So now you can do it much quicker. If you hold down Alt on your keyboard and left click on this area here, you can cycle through 8-bit, 16, and 32. Number 14 is crop comp to region of interest. So just like in Photoshop, you can also crop your composition in After Effects. So let me show you what I mean. If you left click on this icon in here, you can define the region you want to crop, like so, by drawing a box around your area. So I'm just going to adjust things a little bit. And once you're ready to crop, you just go to Composition and Crop Comp to Region of Interest. Number 15 is CC Vignette. And so normally to create a vignette for your comp, you would create a new solid, Control Y, and then do the whole OK, apply some ellipse mask over it, and maybe do some subtract here in the masks options. You can hit M twice to bring more options here and do some feathering maybe. That would probably work. You can even adjust the mask itself. maybe like so. And then maybe do the whole blending mode like soft light. But the problem is it's way too many steps that I want to take. And now you can do it much quicker. So let me show you what I mean. Let me erase this solid. Now you can just select the footage or whatever it is you want to apply the vignette on, and then just search for CC Vignette here, double click on it, and now instantly you have all these options. So you can, do the amount here, control the angle of view, which is kind of cool, and you can do also pin highlights here as well, and also define the center of your vignette. And as you can see, it takes no time to create a great looking vignette. Number 16 is detail preserving upscale, and it is exactly what it sounds. So basically you can take a small footage and scale it up and still preserve the detail. And so for this, I'm going to use this footage of my wife and my daughter. It's 480 by 270. And so let's see what happens when you bring in this footage into 4K comp. So I'm just going to drag it in here. And as you can see, it's very tiny. And so if I were to scale it the traditional way, by hitting S and scaling it, or just fitting it to comp, this is what it would look like at 100%. I see a lot of pixelation and stuff. So let me turn this off for a second. And I'm going to bring in another one and do it the new way. So I'm just going to drag that in here. And this time, I'm just going to search for detail preserving upscale and double click on it to apply it to my footage here. And so next, what you can do, you can just do fit to comp width to scale it up, and that's good. And let me scale 100% here. So this is what we have now with this plugin. And as you can see, it's not the best, but it's decent. So let's see what it looked like before. So this is what it looks like with a traditional way of scaling. So you definitely can see the pixelations around here, not much contrast and stuff. So if you see what it is now and before, you can definitely see the difference. 17 is Pixel Motion Blur. And if you're familiar with a plugin called Real Smart Motion Blur, this is kind of like the plugin, except it's free and not as good, but still can get the job done. So let me show you how this works. Let's say I have this quick animation here. This is just a footage. So in other words, I can't adjust anything to this. And as you can see, there is no motion blur. And if I select this motion blur thing in here, it still doesn't work because it's a footage now. So how do we apply motion blur to this? And this is where we will use this Pixel Motion Blur plugin. So just type Pixel Motion Blur plugin in here and just double click or drag it on your footage here. And as you can see, it generates motion blur. So yeah, within seconds you can do that. And obviously it's not as good, but it'll definitely get the job done. Number 18 is show overlays and layer controls in RAM preview. So let's say I have like a simple animation in here. What if, let's say, I want to select some of these and actually bring in some guides too into my compositions and stuff. So something like that, just as an example. And if I scroll through this timeline here, my selection is visible and my guidelines are visible. But when I hit spacebar and do my RAM preview, everything disappears. But what if for some odd reason I want all those things to be visible? Is there a way to do RAM preview and still see all that stuff? And the answer is yes. All you have to do is just go to this preview window here and make sure you check this thing right here. And once it's checked, hit spacebar and everything is visible. Number 19 is increase or decrease transformation of selected layers. And so for this, I'm going to use this little setup here. And I'm going to select the text and I'm going to mess around with the text. So let's bring rotation, hit R, and then T for opacity, and then scale. So we have all this stuff here. So let's play with the scale first. And so before to scale up and down, you would probably just do a slide here and just scale it that way. But now you can use a shortcut. And the shortcut for scale is Control plus or minus. So if you hit hold down Control on your keyboard and do plus or minus on your numpad, you can go increments of 1. As you can see, scale is being affected by increments of 1. But what if I want to do increments of 10? So all you have to do is just add shift to it. So Control Shift plus or minus. And so that's kind of cool. So that's for scale. And so for rotation, the shortcut is plus or minus. So again, minus, we'll do increments of 1 to the left, and then to the right is plus. But what if I want to do increments of 10? You just do shift minus or plus. So this one is pretty cool. And the last one is for opacity. And the shortcut for the opacity is Control Alt plus or minus. So let's do Control Alt minus. As you can see, is being affected by increments of 1. And if I want to do increments of 10, I just do Control Alt Shift and plus or minus. Number 20 is add or remove keyframe at current time. And so for this, I'm going to use this logo here, and I'm going to bring up all my transformations. So let's do A for anchor point, P for position, R for rotation, T for opacity, and S for scale. And so how do I set a keyframe for one of these without clicking on the stopwatch or this thing right here? In other words, how do I set a keyframe using keyboard shortcut? Here's the thing to remember: Alt Shift. Remember Alt Shift. So to set a keyframe for anchor point, all you do is Alt Shift A, and you can go, do the same thing. Alt Shift A will set a keyframe for anchor point, and then if you want to erase the keyframe, it's Alt Shift A as well. So it adds and erases it as well. So to set a keyframe for position is Alt Shift P. And then the same thing, if you want to get rid of it, it's Alt Shift P, and that will erase it as well. So for scale is Alt Shift S. And for rotation is Alt Shift R. And for opacity is Alt Shift T. 21 is altering multiple keyframes. And for this, I'm going to use the rotation keyframes, but you're not limited to just rotation keyframes. It can be scale, position, opacity. So this method can be applied to all of those. So just a little side note here. But let's say I have this quick animation like this, just a simple rotation animation. And what if I wanted to add 20, or let's do 30 degrees to every keyframe? How do I do that? I don't want to go and add that individually. So what you need to do is make sure your time indicator is hovering over a keyframe, because if it's not, you're just going to set another keyframe, and I'm sure you don't want that. So next, after you do this, select all your keyframes, and then here you just type plus 30, and it's going to add plus 30 degrees to all of the other keyframes, as you can see, like so. That's kind of cool. If let's say, what if I want to subtract 30, or I want to tilt it the other way? How do I do that? I guess if you did plus 30, what if you do minus 30? And the problem with this, it doesn't work, because it sets all the other keyframes to negative 30, and that's not what we want. So what you need to do, you just say plus, or plus can be just like add negative 30, and it'll do the exact same thing, as you can see. Another method for this, you make sure your time indicator is hovering a keyframe and all your keyframes are selected. You can just use this slider in here. So whatever you add to this keyframe, it automatically adds to all the other keyframes as well. 22 is show only material options property group. And so I'm not sure about you, but every time I bring in a light into my scene, there's always like a layer or two that I don't want to be seen by a light. And normally you would have to go to material options to disable the light feature, but I don't know about you, but it's buried way down in the layer. So you'd have to go through all this other jazz just to get to the material options. And that's way too much work. And if you have more than one layer selected, it can get pretty crazy. So how do I get there quicker? So all you have to do, just hit A twice on your keyboard. And now you can just disable lights. And next thing you can do also, you can just select the material options and hit Control C to copy it. And you can just paste it to all the other layers by doing Control V. And that will get the job done. 23 is looping animation. And so for this, I have very simple position animation in here. So it's something like this, just a quick A and B. So what if, let's say I want to loop something afterwards. So let's say I wanted to go boom and just keep doing this afterwards. What you do is hold down Alt on your keyboard and click, left click on this stopwatch, and then go here and then go to property, and it says right here loop in and loop out. Now we're going to focus on loop out for right now. And so what out means is going to start looping after your last keyframe. and loop in, it's gonna loop before your first keyframe. So right now, it just loops. Like if I play from here, as you can see, it's not doing anything here until we get to the last keyframe. So it's just looping this animation. So that's cool. But there's other things you can do in here. So where it says cycle, you can add other words to it. So let's say offset. And if you type that in, so now it just slightly offsets your animation. So that's cool. Next, what you can do, you can just type ping pong. And it will just go back and forth. So that's cool. And so that's for loop out. And the same thing applies for loop in. So instead of out, we're just going to type in. And now you can see that nothing is happening after this keyframe, but everything's going on before our first keyframe. 24 is converting audio to keyframes. And so for this, I'll use this track by a friend of mine, Vlad Saloha, who's a very talented musician. And so we'll take this track and we'll convert it to keyframes. To do that, we're going to right click on this layer here and go to Keyframe Assistant and convert audio to keyframes. So once you do that, you'll see a null here. And if you hit E to see the effects of this null, you can see that we have left channel, right channel, and actually both channels. So now, since we have the keyframe values of this track, we can do something with it. So I'm going to apply the both channels property to the scale property of this shape layer. So I'm going to hit S to reveal the scale property, and I'm going to do Alt left click on the stopwatch here, and then I'll pick whip to this slider in here. So now this scale property is going to take the number from here, from the slider. So as you can see, it's the same and it's animated, but the problem is the number is so low we don't even see the shape layer. So how do we fix that? I guess you can always do some math here, and you can say times 50. So you'll take this number and it'll times, and it'll make it a bigger number. So now you can see that it's working. But you can also do this. You can bring in a slider into your scene, and you can apply it directly to your shape layer here. And now you can take this value here, 50, you highlight it, and you say, all right, it's going to be times this slider. So whatever the value is in this slider. And so now obviously it's 0, so you don't see the shape layer. But if you slide it up, you can, like to 50 maybe, you can see that it's working. And the cool thing about this, you can actually keyframe this value if you need to. So now let's preview what we got. 25 is reducing solids. So each time you create a new solid or a null, it stores it in this folder in here. And if you do too many of them, I mean, it can get pretty congested in here. So a lot of times what I like to do, I like to simplify this area. In fact, I normally just create one solid and I just drag it to my new composition and kind of recycle it. I hardly ever create another solid if I don't need to. But if you have and it looks pretty crazy, here's how to reduce it. So a lot of times you can click on the solid here and you can see the details about it. So you can see the dimensions of it and how many times it's being used. So you can see this one is being used 3 times, but this one is the same one, but it's not being used. And so is that one. It's the same one, but it's not being used. So I can just go ahead and get rid of it. Good. And so now nulls, you can see that each null, it's the exact same size and it's been used once. So how do I make sure the other ones are not being used? So to do that, just select the first null and then hit Alt and left click and drag and drop it on top of each null you want to replace. And so now you can see that this one is not being used anymore, and so is that one. But this one is being used 3 times. So that's good. And now you can select the other 2 and hit delete. And the same thing for this. I can tell they're the exact same dimension and both of them are being used once. So I'm going to hold Alt and click and drag and drop to replace the other 2. So now that they're not being used, I can select the 2 and erase them. So that's good. And next time I need a solid, I can just click and drag and drop it into my composition. Or if I need a null, I can just click and drop into my composition and hit T on my keyboard and bring down the opacity. And now you have a null. Okay, so the last one is save when starting render queue. So now when you hit render, you actually can save a copy of your project file. And it'll be stored in the root level of your project file, which is kind of cool if you think about it. So, but you have to make sure that that feature is checked. So you go to Edit, Preferences, and Autosave. And in here, just make sure this thing is checked and hit OK when you're done. And next time you render, you'll save a copy of your project file. All right, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Again, be sure to like the video, share it, comment. I love hearing from you guys. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and all that good stuff. But until next time, my name is Sergey Prakhnevsky, and this is ukramedia.com.